First thing I want, before we get to the business, is want to remind everybody that we have Concord TV, which is going to be with us tonight. So for those participating around the table and for those who are going to testify this evening, I really strongly encourage you to speak directly into the mic so that everybody at home can listen to you over and over and over.
Multiple times. Oh, you looked good on TV the other day.
So you want to say that closely into the mic so everybody can hear it. Anyway. Well, welcome. So tonight, the agenda item is one, and it's probably one of the most important things going on in the city, and that is a follow-up to the presentation that we received from McFarland Johnson and the state of New Hampshire at our last meeting, and regarding the plans and alternatives that were presented to us for consideration. So this is TPAC, which stands for Transportation Policy Advisory Committee. The Transportation Policy Advisory Committee will listen to, we're hoping that you'll come up tonight and share your thoughts, tell us what you like, what you dislike, and anything else you want to share with us. We as a group will listen to what you have to say. We will consider everything you're willing to share with us, and then we'll deliberate, probably not tonight. Tonight is really about you and sharing your thoughts, although people around the table may have questions for you. And then we'll get together later next month in fairly early September, and then we will work to finalize a recommendation that we'll forward to the City Council. So that's the kind of the process we're going through. And so with that, did everybody get a chance to see the presentation from last meeting? Great. It's all on the website, and I encourage you, if you haven't really spent some time, to go and to check it out, because I think everything's there. So I will share with you one last thing. We did have in a subcommittee meeting of the pedestrian bicycle subcommittee Tuesday night. We were able to go through and talk about some of the alternatives were presented. There was no conclusions. We just kind of talked about things that made sense and didn't make sense. And you'll see on that back table, if you want to get up and look, I think there's A through F in alternatives. And this is really kind of around that exit 14 area as to what some of the things that have been presented to us. So again, if you want to check out what we saw in a much larger map, it's in the back table A through F. We're going to keep this up here tonight. I think it was the idea was to put a kind of a general map up, so if somebody wanted to reference it in their comments, they could do that as well. And with that, is there any questions from the committee or any thoughts, concerns, considerations? Really appreciate everybody coming out on a beautiful evening. So, okay. Mr. Engineer, do you have anything you want to share before we start?
I'm good.
All right. So, who would like to come and tell us what you thought about what we all saw the other night? Come on, Ron. There you go. You didn't let me down.
Why not?
It's good to see you, Ron.
This one?
Sure. Any one of the three.
I wasn't able to, name is Ron Rayner, resident here in Rumford Street. I wasn't able to attend in person on August the 9th, but at the suggestion of several city officials, I did go online today, clicked on YouTube video. 1 hour and 40 minutes is the YouTube video length. I probably watched 1 hour and 28 minutes, and then went back and repeated concepts A through F so I could get a better handle on the MRGT, which seems to be one of the finality things that we need to focus on. I've been involved in this since 17 strictly as a concerned resident and retired engineer. I've met with John Butler and Don Lightford from DOT. I think Don is retired, and I believe John is still involved. And before I go further, is there a rep here from tonight from McFarland Johnson? No?
No, I know, but the DOT project manager, I believe, is here. Or I saw
Okay,
him earlier.
well, I was hoping somebody would from McFarland
He's
Johnson.
smiling and nodding back there.
They could take notes.
Their boss is here. How's that?
Okay. So that I've been involved since 17, periodically 18, 19, and then the last few months. So after reviewing the video multiple iterations and times, I think we've come a really, really long way since 17. I compliment where we are getting towards. I really appreciate going from the cluster leaf at exit 15 to the clover stack. I think it's clever. I had originally suggested some elevated sections in that area to not have to go through such extensive re-engineering, but I think the clover stack works better and likely less expensive than an elevated section of highway. I compliment the city and McFarland Johnson for having the drawings on the back page, the back table, A through F. Although the video did say that the preferred alternative at this time is F 2.3, all those are 2.1s, all of them. Even the F is 2.1. Okay, so moving on, I have some suggestions relative. So I think that the highway portion, the really most expensive, critical part, is well taken care of at 14 and 15. I think it's incumbent upon the city to leave the 14 on-ramp with only entrance from the east highway, from the eastern section of Loudon Road. And so I'm going to make suggestions and I'll be done. And I think my suggestions will basically help resolve both Stickney Ave and Fort Eddy Road relative to details and clarifications. I think it hopefully can expedite some finality and we can move on. My personal suggestion would be of the 6 options back there, again, my own suggestion as a retired engineer, would be that A and D, Anita and Dolly, be dismissed, and that we leave the remaining 4. With those remaining 4, I would suggest that we go back to McFarland Johnson and that we ask them to work with their AutoCAD and graphics people, and through various colors, line weights, and legends, it would really, I think, help everyone's understanding of the number of crossings on both Loudon, Fort Eddy, and Stickney Road. So at present, the Greenway Trail is then intended to go under the new highway bridge, on Loudon Road on the east side of the river. And I support that. It's not a tunnel. It goes under the bridge, and then it swerves back into the area of Everett Arena. But from there, it kind of gets a little dicey in terms of when you look at the color charts in the back, we have a surface crossing for pedestrian right-of-way and bikeway, or do we have an elevated crossing? And again, through enhanced graphics, AutoCAD, which they have more than the capability to do, colors, line weights, legends, they could differentiate and distinguish between what they propose now as a surface crossing, what is an elevated crossing. I totally agree there should be no surface crossings on Loudon Road. I agree with the north side of the new Loudon Road Bridge for the Merrimack River Greenway Trail. But again, after that, it gets kind of a little bit, to me, wishy-washy in terms of what does the Greenway Trail going over Eddy and Stickney, is it surface or elevated? And again, I repeat, I think it could be fairly easily demonstrated. McFarland Johnson knows what they have in mind. It's not abundantly clear to the public at large. And I think if they illustrated those, they printed those out in colors, just like they did on the back, printed them on 24 by 36, presented them at the next TPAC meeting, I think you could make a lot of headway.
Perfect, thank you.
Thoughts?
Did you have any
Questions?
since you're here, did you take a look, what did you think of exit 12?
T-bones.
I know you watched the whole thing, so I can ask.
But I did. I really did. Yeah, we're getting, we're adopting a lot of our English motherhood from the roundabouts, but yeah, it would probably work.
How about exit 13?
Yeah, you're gonna have to make some additions to a small section of the south side of that bridge to accommodate the second lane heading east on Manchester Street. So there's gonna have to be some accommodation there. And I think the expansion of two and two going east, and then the widening of Turnpike Road, I think all that's good, alongside of Turl Park.
What about exit 15?
I'm being grilled. Dwight, you gonna buy me a beer after this?
Have I ever not bought?
No, I like the clover leaf cluster. I do. I think it has really good potential.
Okay, all right.
We need to, and you made a comment towards the end, I believe, that this is it. We need to resolve this once and for all. And I guess to add perhaps some finality, I don't think there will ever be, even 30, 40 years from now, another, gee, do we go from 3 and 3 to 3 and 4 or 4 and 4? No. That's history. I think that despite our advances in technology with electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, the number of vehicles, perhaps the way that they are moved about will change. But the actual number of vehicles, I don't believe, will reduce dramatically unless we're gonna hire, Greyhound buses from Boston and bring everybody up. I don't think that's about to happen. So the actual, daily traffic volume, ATV, or average traffic volume over the course of the day, I don't think it's gonna change all that much.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you watching the whole thing. Any question, Mr. Rayner?
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate you
Okay.
putting the time in.
Well, thank you.
Who'd like to go next?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Good evening and welcome.
Hi, Dennis Casey. Dennis Casey from Concord. I was at the last meeting, so I had a couple questions when I left. One of them had to do with commuter rail and the possibility of it affecting this project. Kind of got an answer to that before the meeting started. But the other question I have has to do with the Manchester Street, the two turning lanes onto, is it Old Turnpike?
Yep.
I'm wondering if anyone ever considered a roundabout in that location, or whether the volume makes that not feasible. And also, I just wanted to make a point of clarification. If I'm not mistaken, when McFarland presented in that previous meeting, I thought they said they did not need to widen the bridge there to accommodate a second lane for a left turn. That's what I recall.
As do I.
So do you know whether anyone's considered a roundabout down there, or?
Do you want to try that?
I don't think it's been looked at in great depth, but the city doesn't have much, we don't own much property on those various corners.
I've never seen that stop people in the past from putting roundabouts in. In fact, I was like, they're gonna put a roundabout here? But I've seen it happen, so.
Point taken, we are squeezing a roundabout up on a two-lane roundabout up on Hoyt Road, but,
So I imagine if they put one in there, it would probably have to be a two-lane, one of those,
exactly.
and that, of course, would require a lot more real estate.
Right, yeah, a similar amount of real estate as the one we're constructing up at exit 17.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Actually, before you go, does anybody have any questions? Thanks. Mr. Casey, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Who'd like to go next? Welcome.
Hello. I'm Aaron Frack-Monroe, a 22-year Concord resident and occasional commuter to Manchester. I'm here today with Concord Green Space, which is a grassroots organization that's promoting sustainable development within the city. Thank you all for the opportunity to provide the input on all the hard work and dedication that TPAC and the city and DOT has been doing for the last 20 years on this I-93 project. Since reviewing the most recent iteration and videos on the expansion proposal, we've been gathering input from the community and brainstorming ideas that we'd like to share with TPAC and our elected officials. For the last 20 years, cities across the country have been writing the devastating impacts of 1960s era highway development on our communities and our natural resources. I-93 runs right through the middle of our city, exacerbating socioeconomic divides, damaging urban landscapes, dividing resources, limiting sustainable development, and degrading our great public resource, the Merrimack River. At the last hearing in 2019 and community sentiment back in 2005, the testimony made it clear that the state needed to update the design that would benefit the city and her residents. And we're not seeing major significant changes, particularly around the Loudoun and downtown connection, especially with how it goes with our master plans. So like other people have said, I think Ron said there, if we don't redesign I-93 in the correct way, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And if we don't do it properly, that opportunity is lost. So some of the suggestions that we've gotten from the community, other members that can look at the vision and see what it could be, are a number of things. We need to increase the connectivity between the Heights and downtown and back to the riverfront. An example was a platform or cap park over I-93, giving river access and connecting the east and the west by a bicycle or pedestrian bridge. A quality feasibility study by a firm specializing in these projects needs to be done ASAP. This is not a new idea from what I understand. There was some 2005 master plans that had this information in it, and other community members and I believe Councilor Champlin have been exploring that idea as well. We also, people want to see a reduced barrier effect of the railroad while allowing for future commuter rail use. We'd like to see the availability of scaling back the auxiliary lanes, so we go from 4 lanes to 6 lanes and not all the way up to 8 to reduce the impact of excess pavement and heat islands. We'd also like to get some more information on the impact of designated speed on this plan. I didn't see that there was any significant realignment of the highway, and the curves around exit 12 can be pretty tight at times if they're looking at increasing the speed up to 65 or 70. We'd also like to see additional accommodation and safety consideration for bicyclists and pedestrians, especially around those multi-lane exits. In the past few years, there have been multiple pedestrian injuries and fatalities of some of the city's most vulnerable residents trying to navigate in those areas. And we should look at including separated bike lanes as well on the major artery routes, not mixing cars and bikes right together. Much has changed in the world and Concord since 2019, and we'd request workshops and charrettes so that the community can fully participate in the development of this project. So going past additional drawings and actually getting out there with markers and pens and things like that for design. And we want high quality street and landscaping at all of the interchanges. So Like you said, Mr. Mayor, DOT plans to finalize this by the end of the year, and the city is going to take up the issue in the fall with the council. Let's not further 1960s era transport designs in 2022. This leaves all of us with just a short amount of time to do this hard work of acting on the vision and the plan of what could be. What other cities have proved successful, restoring access to green space and waterways, revitalizing economic development corridors, joining the east and the west sides together with smart transportation. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay, do you mind if I walk you through and you can tell me what you think about some of the pieces? Everybody okay with that? So exit 12,
Yep.
what did you think about exit 12? And by the way, I appreciate all the information you put on your website, because it's a lot of what you covered tonight and was very helpful, by the way.
Yep. And I know that this has been going on since 2005 as well, with citizens being very concerned about the projects. So I have other members of the organization that I think are going to speak about
Oh, okay.
specific
Okay.
portions. I just wanted to get an overview.
Yep, that's perfect. Can I, one question on something you specifically said? You talked about bike lanes on major
Arterials.
arterials. Where are you visioning that?
So I think on the Manchester Street areas, down to Loudon Road, just that entire corridor between 12 and Loudon
So
Road.
off the highway. You're
Off the
talking about
highway.
Main Street to Fisherville to Pleasant,
Yeah,
northwest.
I think getting people onto
south.
the Greenway, getting easy access across the river.
Gotcha.
Not having to traverse all the way down and back up to come into town.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming tonight. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Allison Grapponi, and thank you, Aaron. I support everything that he said. I was born and raised here, left for about 10 years, came back because it's a wonderful place to live. And I originally lived on the north end and biked pretty much like 90 to 95% of the time for all my in-town stuff, everything, like going grocery shopping, seeing friends, doing errands. Then I moved to the south end, and I am part of the congestion problem now because I bike maybe 5% of the time and this is from like May to October, November. So I'm coming as somebody who wants to emphasize that I know I'm part of the congestion problem. So I'm just wondering, my question is that concept of in-town people adding to the congestion problem being considered, so that if we take care of some of that walkability, bikeability, that might actually alleviate some of the highway congestion. Thank you so much for the work you've done. I know it's been since, I think, 2002. I watched the video, looked at all the old materials, and thanks for keeping on this.
Thanks. Anybody?
I have a question.
Sure.
What's preventing you from riding now?
It just really safety. I mean, I lived on the north end where I could get down into like northeast Delta Dental without much trouble, and then I could do all my errands right down there and really have almost no contact with cars. And now even South Street, I mean, it's like people try to run you off the road, or they don't mean to, but they do. So I kind of avoid that, or I only go early morning, or like I biked tonight because there won't be much traffic going back.
Anybody else? Thank you. Appreciate it.
I just wanted to share, because I live on the south end too, and I still am the stubborn person who bikes, and I feel like I'm a bigger contributor of the congestion problem because I got a line of traffic stuck behind me. So having that separated bike lane would be a good idea.
Thanks. Who'd like to go next?
Yeah.
I know you all have good ideas, so come on, come share with me. Hi there.
My name is Nicole Fox. I was out of town at the last meeting, but
I feel like I'm surrounded by engineers.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hazard of a highway meeting. I was out of town, but I watched the whole video. So, as the mayor indicated, I'm also a transportation engineer. And I just wanted to mention that transportation engineering is starting to reevaluate some of the decisions of the past and some of the conventional wisdom, including as it relates to the idea that widening highways successfully alleviates congestion. I've lived in other states where we have lots and lots of lanes and far more congestion than we have here. And the more we added, the more congestion we got. But the river should be the heart of our city, but it's largely inaccessible due to the highway, and the highway creates a divide between the east and west sides of the city and the people on the east and west side of the city, as well as making it really difficult for people on the east side to come into town and access their local government. This divide is only going to be magnified by making the highway twice as wide as it is now. I have some questions that I know probably aren't really for you, but they're things that I think it would be good to investigate with the state. Has the traffic modeling been updated post-COVID to reflect the lower traffic volumes and changed travel patterns? Have all of the lanes proposed, are all of them still needed? And what's the difference in level of service without the auxiliary lanes, different configurations? And then also, what is the proposed design speed for the highway? Currently, it's 55 miles an hour speed limit in Concord, and that difference in speed limit and design speed really allows a lot more flexibility in design, which might allow for, fewer impacts in some areas.
Okay. I tried to write as fast as I could. I think I captured your
Sorry.
questions. No.
I talk fast.
No, that's okay. But would you mind just emailing that
Absolutely.
to us? And so that I just want to make sure that we can follow up on all the questions and get them right,
Yep.
not by my notes. Counselor?
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I had a question about the part you mentioned about the field reconsidering adding additional lanes, and if there were any things that you're seeing in other communities that they're doing alternatively that you would recommend for Concord, and then if you had any examples about how, if they know why that's not alleviating congestion.
So, honestly, the alternative is to simply not build more lanes. I haven't looked at the traffic numbers, but I've been commuting back and forth to Manchester for 15 years, and I personally haven't experienced the traffic is substantially worse now than it was 15 years ago. I could be wrong. It could very well be the time of day that I travel, but I am sure there are traffic numbers available to determine whether that's the case or not. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second part of that?
Oh, if you had some examples of how it actually doesn't alleviate congestion.
Oh,
if we know the reasoning
So,
why.
well, the concept is, it's called induced demand, which is essentially that, it's a little bit complicated, but the idea is that essentially people have a certain amount of traffic that they're willing to accept and the amount of delay that it will take them. And when you build more lanes, people will change their travel patterns, development patterns change, which creates more demand.
Thank you.
So, being the non-engineer, you please tolerate my question, okay?
Sure.
So one of the, so I've been pretty clear that I don't mind people stuck because I like getting off the highway to buy stuff
Yeah.
here and stay here and appreciate our community, which I think is great. So, but having said that, I do know that at certain times of the year, Friday nights,
Fridays and Sundays.
Sunday nights.
Saturday too.
Thursdays, actually, I'm discovering it now.
So several nights of the week. But I'm going to pick Sunday. I'm going to pick Sunday.
Sure.
we get calls, and I think you experience this probably more than anybody else, because our council represents Ward 10, which is really East Concord. And we're finding, and I used to live over there, so I can speak to it myself a little bit, but we're finding that, you know, it used to be people were getting off exit 16 and going down East Side Drive, and then we're finding people getting off exit 17 and going down Mountain Road, where it's, you know, then people are getting off 17, now they're going down Fishville since we've improved Fishville Road. So we're starting to get more and more calls from residents who are struggling to getting out of their driveway. It's, you know, it's become more burdensome from them. So I appreciate the concept of the in demand, and I want to understand more about that. But I wondered if you had any thoughts about kind of what we're experiencing, and I hope not trying to speak for anyone else, but what we're getting for feedback on some of those nights that people are getting off. And, you know, everybody's got they're all looking at their maps on their phone, and they're looking at the GPS in their car, and they
Right,
say,
the
I can
Waze
go this
problem.
way and I can
Yeah.
cut through. Any thoughts on something like that?
You know, that's a legitimate concern. Obviously, people who know that way will take shortcuts. You know, my commute from Manchester on Fridays is not on 93. I won't tell you which way I go, because then more people will take my way. You know, that is an issue. Communities can request that those mapping services take certain routes off of that detour list, which can help alleviate some of that. But you are right, there certainly are trade-offs. And again, you know, I'm not saying that there's absolutely no reason for any widening whatsoever, and it absolutely has to stop, but I just think that before we accept a highway that is twice as wide as the one we have now, which is already a major divide in the city, that we actually take the time to evaluate. We've had a major societal shift in the last couple of years, and like, have we actually looked at that or considered it? I know on projects that I work on, because unfortunately projects that take 20 years or more are not uncommon, that projections for 20 years out, when the project started 20 years ago, are substantially higher than the traffic volumes we're experiencing now on some of those projects. And some of that had to do with the Great Recession, some of it had to do with COVID, but cumulatively, those projections, traditionally traffic projections are, okay, we will assume this percentage of growth and we will project it out upward into infinity. And that's how we assess these things, and maybe it's time for a little bit of a reevaluation on that. And if those traffic volumes, if that traffic modeling was done 5 years ago, things might be rather different. So.
I actually have something that occurred to me when I was thinking about this, because I'm one of the people that leave Concord to go north, and I experience, and I have my own shortcuts, and it's not East Side Drive, it's someplace else. But, so really, truly for us, I feel, because I'm from the way North Country, and we had, believe it or not, the same issue on the same days up in Littleton. Have there ever been any studies on just that specific commuter path or that specific commuter issue in terms of people who are coming north and south, specifically from the Boston, New York area now, Connecticut sometimes we see, right? But they're all coming into a very specific area at very specific times, and like, what is that drive? What's driving them? What is, you know, is it just to get to the lake house for the 3 days of the weekend that they're there? And has that, I think it has shifted since COVID, because I see people now coming up Wednesday nights because they're commuting, they're working from home, so they're going to the lake and working at the lake instead of working in the office. But I also feel like there's a piece, because I've heard it a couple of different times, I want them to come off the highway and stay and visit, and my mind, having been stuck in traffic before, I just want to get there. I'm not getting off the highway and giving up my place. So I didn't know if there was some studies that may have been done around what does drive that, and what would entice people off the highway, and what keeps them on the highway, and what, you know, like, I don't know, it's probably a 20-year plan just in doing that kind of a study. But is there a university out there that would be willing to poll commuters that say, what is it? What are you doing? Why? And how is that going to affect what we're planning on doing for a highway? Because it seems like a rather specific problem. It's the commuters coming up and the commuters going back.
Right, and, and that's part of my feeling about this is that, this highway widening is gonna benefit people from Massachusetts heading up to the mountains, and the costs are borne by the residents of Concord, among others, but, I don't wanna leave Bo out, but,
You can, it's fine.
like, we're the ones who have to live with an 8-lane highway every day of the week, dividing our city, and I just want to make sure that we're making sure that the due diligence is really being done. There's very competent engineers and good people at DOT, and I know everyone's doing their, a good job. I just want to make sure that we take a step back and don't just push projects forward because we're tired, because we've been working on them for a long time. And trust me, I've worked on some projects for more than a decade. I understand the fatigue. But I just would like us to take a step back and make sure we're making the right choices for us.
Yep, I think we all do. Anyone else? So I'm going to see if I can get some free engineering out of you.
All right.
So let's put aside the issue of the widening, which is an issue unto itself, which I'm glad you brought up tonight. But can I take you through what I did earlier?
You can. There are certain areas I paid slightly less attention to because I was working all week, but yes.
Okay. So exit 12 with the 2 roundabouts on either side, do you see any concerns?
I think that the roundabouts look like they will probably be good additions as far as traffic flow goes. I have similar concerns at all of the interchanges, which is how carefully are we taking care of the bikes? Roundabouts are particularly challenging for bicycles.
Okay. And 13 by adding the extra turning lanes and.
Again, I think I have a lot of concerns about how bicycles and pedestrians would navigate those extra wide ramp lanes. But an extra turn lane is good. I mean, I know that's a really heavily trafficked area and getting better ability to turn left.
Okay. And then I'll skip 14 for a sec. 15 and kind of eliminating 2 of the clovers, I guess, what would you call it?
Yeah, I know, there's lots of names.
I don't
It's
know what
fine.
they are.
I think it's a clover stack, but I'm not even sure if that's right, so.
I'm not going to pretend to know.
Yeah, I mean, those kind of interchanges, this is a little bit better, but they take up so much footprint, like their footprints are so large and they take up a lot of land, but that seems fine and probably has less conflict points, certainly, than what we have now.
Yeah. And then the last one, and I'm sorry for asking so many questions, but I feel like it's, again,
I'm here.
And then exit 14, the elimination of the left turn going east to get onto 14 north, and just keeping from people who are going west to kind of, it almost feels like from Fort Eddy or
Yep.
going. What do you think of that concept?
So I have a fairly unpopular opinion on the northbound on-ramp, which is, it's fine, we can get rid of it. I think that the proposed access that would allow you to get on, it's via Stickney, that you can connect up to 393 and get on northbound from there.
Yeah.
Assuming that's still in the plan, that was the previous version. I thought that was probably okay. It's not that heavily used a ramp in comparison to some of the other ones, but I know that's very unpopular, so I think the new version is okay too.
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
do not like the right in, right out on Stickney though, so
Oh, but the median there.
yeah,
Okay.
those I don't like. I think there's really no good opportunities for people to safely make U-turns, and if you've turned right into Stickney, chances are pretty good you want to turn left out. So, without providing a place to turn around that isn't already a really congested, difficult intersection of, I would assume would either be Fort Eddy or Main Street, that just seems like we're asking for more crashes.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyone else? I really appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you so much. It's always good to have a neighbor, too.
I had a comment regarding the Ward 10, Cheville Road, Sunday nights. And if you guys have been on this committee with me for at least 6 months, so you know the whole not being able to get out of your driveway. My solution is bus priority. There's a fantastic article this morning in the Monitor about on-demand bus services, specifically for grocery shopping. Highlighted everybody in Concord that doesn't have a driver's license or is unable to drive the vehicle. So whether it's bus priority lanes, meaning anybody that's coming from the White Mountains and trying to get back to Boston can be stuck in traffic, and anybody that's trying to do their grocery shopping on a Sunday night can whiz right by all of them. But also with that is just more bike lanes. If you don't have to get your car out of your driveway, it's a lot easier to go places.
Thanks.
That's it.
We're going to focus on making all the people who came out tonight, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Who'd like to go next? Counselor. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Alan Hirschlag. It's been such an inviting meeting that I thought I'd force myself and come up here and express some of my concerns and questions. So I might have misheard, which wouldn't be unusual, about the timeline. So perhaps somebody could, my understanding at the last meeting was that the final public meeting would be the end of 2023, not 2022, or am I missing a meeting in there somehow? Or did I just mishear that?
I can bring up the schedule.
Yeah, so there's two schedules in my mind. There's the DOT schedule, and then there's kind of the city council schedule. I think you're referring to the DOT presentation? I want to get the right answer.
Yes, so if that final meeting is at 2023, would there be any ability to make any adjustments or changes at that point, or would any of the real opportunity for changes or adjustments come at the end of this year?
Jason, you want to answer that question? Yeah, if you don't mind. We'll get the best person to answer the question. How's that?
Thank you.
Because it's definitely not me. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jason Ayotte. I'm the New Hampshire DOT Project Manager for Bow Concord. The specific question as far as the timeline is, our goal was to be able to present at a public hearing, which is our formal hearing, to identify what the right-of-way would be by the end of 2023. At that point, then final design would begin, and there's probably 2 to 3 years more of final design for the first contract. So the idea here is that we would like to have an idea and concurrence from the city to be able to keep moving forward to a public hearing.
So that's pretty much
That's the schedule that McFarland Johnson has added to that slide.
So would I be correct in understanding that at the end of 2023, there would still be opportunities for input that would be recognized to make adjustments at that point?
Yeah, in general, yes. I think that we feel that we still have a lot of opportunity for public outreach and engagement throughout the entire process. We still think that there's going to be outreach over the next year, even before we get to a public hearing. And then as far as some of the specific details for each of the contracts, there would be other opportunities for input at that time too.
Okay, thank you. Because my concern would be that without seeing the final design.
Just hold on 1 second. Do you want to sit up here?
I'm here more as an observer. I'm certainly willing to answer questions.
All right, you go hide in the back. Sorry, Alan, I apologize.
Thanks. My concern would be if we haven't seen a final design, that I would hope that there would be able to be input and that there would be enough of a timeline to be able to make adjustments to before they move forward. So I do appreciate you getting an answer for that. I also see the traffic on Mountain Road, Sewell's Falls, heading up East Side Drive. So the question is how would any of these plans, these options, impact that, or wouldn't it? Because the project ends just by the bridge just before Brochus on exit 15. So would that offer enough of traffic relief that people wouldn't feel a need to continue to take those options, even if it may or may not take longer for them to? I think the idea that they're just moving is the relief that they're seeking. So that would be a question that I would have. I'm really concerned about the footprint that we're seeing. It approximately doubles the width of the roadway, and we're going from a 6-lane road to an 8-lane road with an auxiliary lane and shoulders. I would strongly urge this committee and the engineers and the state to look at a way to address the traffic issues that they hope to alleviate without increasing or minimally increasing the footprint of the current highway. I haven't seen anything in any of the plans that addresses or talks about accommodations specifically for the highway, not for Concord, that addresses rail and autonomous vehicles. And then I notice I come back from up north, sometimes not as often on weekends as you used to, but it's a real interesting phenomena. You get to exit 20, and it's like the races are on. And as you approach exit 17, the traffic starts to back up a bit or slow down. So I'm not sure if that's a consequence of reduced speeds or increases in exits. And it appears to happen even when it doesn't appear to be a significant amount of traffic on the roadway itself, on 93. So I'm wondering what in fact is actually causing that. And is it the change in speed limits? Is it, I've heard people say, well, it may be just, you get a sensation that the road narrows, but you're on the road doesn't really change much in how it appears from exit 20 on down. So just something that's always been in the back of my head over the last 20 or 30 years that I've been traveling up and down there. And then there's the question of, are we just pushing the bottleneck further north, or is there something unique about this corridor from exit 12 to 15 that reduces traffic and causes backups that won't occur once they get past a widened or re-engineered highway, that won't occur when you get to exit 16 or 17? And then the last question I have is, will we be pushing any more traffic because of the design, not only from the highway but local traffic? Will we be impacting traffic on 393, and if we are, how will that impact 393? So I think that covers my list. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time. Anybody have any questions, Mr. Slade? Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Who'd like to go next? Good afternoon, or evening, or whatever we are.
Great, how are you?
Good to see you.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name's Craig Savage. I wasn't sure I would speak tonight. My wife asked me as I walked out the door, are you going to speak? I said, well, it depends. And she said, be succinct. So I only wrote down 4 things, but since I've been here, it's been expanded. I've lived in this city for 50 years, and we care about this city very much. I have a son, daughter-in-law, and 8-year-old grandson here. The future of this city, I'm hoping I'm going to get another 20, 25 years out of it, but if I don't, I want them to have that opportunity. And actually, my daughter-in-law is very involved in this city, and I think is trying to do really good things for the city as it moves forward. I know that you received a letter from Claudia Damon. I'm fortunate enough to be a friend and actually helped her with some of the editing of the letter, so I'm very familiar with it. I'm very supportive of her letter and her ideas. She and I were at I get confused as to whether it was 2018 or 19 when that hearing occurred, and there was a huge pushback, and Tom Aspel made it very clear that this city was not going to let the state do anything that wasn't in our best interest. Since that time, I've been waiting for this opportunity for us to move forward. Claudia was at that meeting, and she and I connected most recently about all of this because we both care and because she's got a lot of history. She remembers, she's been involved in the vision for the city, and she happens to be not only an attorney but a smart one. So first of all, I would say I support her letter. Just know that that's the case. And that letter is now on the Concord Green Space Coalition website. So there are an awful lot of people who are seeing that, and I think it's important that you look at every aspect of what she has suggested.
Just so you know, that letter was distributed to all of us as well.
No, I know that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean from our city engineering department.
Right. Well, I knew that. I'm sorry. I meant to imply that. If I didn't, I'm sorry. For me, trying to be succinct, the emphasis for me, I'm not an engineer. I don't know how all this works. I don't understand traffic studies. I know that if a car slows down 2 miles ahead of me, I'm going to get that effect at some point along the way. And there's lots written about it. Engineers know about that. I just want to say, don't widen it. I don't know whether that's realistic or not. Don't widen it. I talked to Tim Sink at the chamber today, and he said, Craig, I think it has to be widened because there's no way that we can manage the traffic that we have now. It's getting worse. It's not getting better, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's true or not true. I'm not sure that we know today whether widening it is really going to accomplish what some people think it's going to accomplish. We need to know that, or as close as we can know that, before we allow DOT to go forward. You know, they have really, really qualified people, and they make good decisions. They work hard. But a lot has happened in the last 10 years, and we need to know if it's the smart thing for us to do. And maybe it needs to be widened, but not doubling the amount of blacktop. The downtown access piece, and it's my understanding from talking to Tim Sink, because they had the DOT make the presentation to them the morning that the TPAC had and I was at that meeting, presentation, and DOT indicated to him, or them, that in fact, the DOT could accommodate some kind of major access from downtown to the east side of the river. Assuming that's the case, this idea of a platform park, and we don't need a 5.2 acre Dallas, Texas platform park. We don't have Texas money. I don't want Texas politics. I don't want Texas money. I don't want any of that. But I think through my life, I don't know that I've thought as big as I would have liked. And this is a time when this city has an opportunity to think really big. And I don't know if it's 1 acre. I don't know what it is. I don't even know what it looks like. I just know that if we could finally take, we're a city with pride in our diversity, but we're not as diverse as we should be. This east-west divide is not only physical, it's more than that. And if we can somehow bridge the downtown west side of the city with the east side of the city, which would promote, I hope, smart commercial activity on the east side of the river, maybe even create, and I'm not sure if Claudia put this in her letter or if she and I had the discussion about the idea of kind of a second Main Street on the east side of the river. That's just conceptual. That's not necessarily physical. But, and by the way, I've gone way beyond succinct.
You're fine.
But if we can do that, and I think that we've got people in this city who think big. Steve Dupree is, as I understand it, he needs to speak for himself, is on board with this. The chamber likes the idea. I know a lot of people who love the idea. The coalition loves the idea. It's an idea. Now's the time for that idea to be put forward in a meaningful way so that we can access federal funds. I think right now, federal funds, this may be the first time in a long time that we can get access to federal funds the way we're getting access now. I think we need to think big and connect this city, make the river what, we're not Portland, we're not Portsmouth, but we've got water. We need to make our water work for us. Again, we're not Dallas, but Dallas says that I think it's Kyle Warren or whatever it is, look it up. They think that since that platform park was put in, it has brought in, I think it's $3 billion in revenue to the city. My wife's been there, I've never been there, but I mean, they've got a football pitch and, they've got all kinds of stuff. It's typical Texas stuff, but we could really, really make something meaningful for this city if we think big and do something about it. One last thing, a couple of things. The interchanges and what I saw from the DOT, again, I'm not an engineer. We all live the danger of pinch points, weaving, that stuff that DOT, whoever made that presentation, I mean, it's crazy. Fix those. I'm all for that. We need to fix those. This is an unsafe corridor in our state, and we need to fix those. So if that requires some widening or whatever, then fine. Roundabouts can be, when you come up Franklin Street from Maine and hit that roundabout, you better be looking left, hard left, and defensive driving on steroids, because people going north on State Street think they own that roundabout. Now that's every roundabout. I happen to go over to Concord Country Club periodically. That roundabout, most of the time's okay. 132 is a nightmare. And now that it's one of the shortcuts or alleviation points off 93 going south, it can be crazy. So I think we got to be careful about how we think about roundabouts. And I'm going to stop.
Thanks, appreciate it. Anybody have any questions? Craig?
I haven't seen Claudia's letter, but I really look forward to it, and I have a zillion questions for you, but I'm gonna kind of just ask one. I'd love to chat with you about stuff, but I'm thinking about what you said and some of the people before you have said, and I'm hearing like, what are our values? Do we value being able to get through Concord really fast, or we value all these other things? And I heard you say you valued safety, and I mean, am I kind of getting to what kind of the point of, or the main boiled down your talk is about, that traffic and congestion and moving cars is much less important than all these other things? Does that kind of feel right to you, saying that?
So I believe in balance in life. Haven't always achieved it. But somewhere between this extreme, and I think it's an extreme of, and I get it, there's impact to people. I'm retired, so I don't have to worry about a commute. I went down to Bass Pro Shop 2 weeks ago on Friday, early afternoon, and on the way back, I thought, oh no, what was I thinking? Ducked onto 3A and I'm stuck on 3A for a half an hour. So I get that, and I also get that all of that there's danger in that. I don't know that widening mitigates the fact that people are driving through our city at 80 miles per hour in a 55 zone. I experienced it today. Went down to Manchester or to Bedford on the way back, same thing. I don't know the engineering aspect of things. In terms of my goals, yes, if we can find a way to improve the flow so that we have a safer highway. I think that's important. I mean, it's been the same since the beginning of the road. And we have a heck of a lot more. When I got here, there are probably 35,000 people in Concord. Now they're whatever, 45, 48, whatever we are, not to mention the surrounding area. I mean, it's probably double what I experienced when I moved here in 1972. I don't know that we need to double that highway so that people can get north and south to their camps. And that may sound critical, prejudice, whatever. I think that we have to look at the bigger picture, though. It's not all about cars going north and south. That's a big issue, and we need to deal with it. As far as Concord goes, I think that we have to integrate that change, that improvement, whatever it is that's smart, that engineers actually thought about, actually used good data. We have to integrate that change with the potential for this city to make a leap with something monumental, big, to access both sides of the river and kind of bring the city. I mean, I was a soccer coach, a soccer referee, and refereed games between the Concord kids and the Pennacook kids. And I saw in that, us and them, the attitude of one part of the city against the other part of the city. You guys, you have done monumental work to try and alleviate that problem and make Pennacook feel a part of this city. We need the east side. We need the city to be the city of Concord, not east, west, Pennacook, whatever. And how we do that, I don't know. I'm just some emotional guy that cares and has some passion about it all and would like to see it all done and done right. Succinct, I'm not.
I appreciate your passion.
Okay. Any other questions?
So I don't need your answers tonight, but I want you to, well, actually, one I want to, curious what you thought. So you talked about the roundabouts. I totally appreciate in terms of not everybody has the same level of sophistication getting through a roundabout.
You mean understanding that?
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So, but you use the example of, and with this project, there are 2 roundabouts at exit 12. That's kind of why I'm asked this question. So we'll use the roundabout at exit 16, okay? Do you feel the roundabout is better today than what it was prior?
So
would you rather just stay with the stop sign?
I'm gonna maybe back off a little bit and say this. I think roundabouts help with traffic flow.
Okay.
I just think there is some danger in them because people totally ignore the rules of the road. But I can be, as I said, down in Bedford coming home tonight or this afternoon and have a car blow by me going 85 and I'm going 73 or because that's my magic number. And I don't know.
All right, I understand. So,
I'm beginning to sound like my mom and dad, and I don't want. That's not why I'm here.
So the second question, and I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but I remember sitting next to Councilor Todd, and we were at a meeting of Main Street, whatever it was called at the time. And I said to him, I go, we really need to think big about Main Street. We really need to think, what can we do? What can be really transformative? He just kind of looked at me like, oh, gosh, well, Main Street changed. And we all got behind it, and I think it has transformed Concord. We have an opportunity to do the same here. And I think many people have said that tonight, and I agree. The question then becomes what? What is it? Because we've talked about, you mentioned the whole platform park kind of concept.
Right.
There's some people who have talked about a bridge that would actually connect, like more of a, it was actually.
Like a pedestrian bridge.
Right, but it was actually, I was going to say, former Councilor Lemieux brought up an example, I think, what city was it?
It's in Sherwood,
Shelburne Falls.
Sherburne Falls, Massachusetts. It was called the Flower Bridge. So go on the Google thing there and, go
Well,
check it
that would
out.
be similar to the High Line in New York City.
Another example,
Similar thing,
sure,
yeah.
sure.
Okay.
So, the question then becomes, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to the community to access the river? Does it mean dipping your toes in the river? Does it mean being able to look down on the river? Does it mean being able to put a boat in the river? Does it, what is it, what does it mean? I think we need to talk a lot about that, because there's a wide range of what thinking big means in access to the river. And there's a big difference between the east side versus the west side and how we can get there. So I don't expect you to answer it tonight, but I would like you to circle back and think about, what does it mean and how we can be successcil.
You want me to be an engineer?
No, I want you to,
No,
I want you to,
I hear
as you said, I want you to think
I'd be
big.
glad to do that. I mean, there are enough people that I know who care about this and want to do it. And it may be that because of, well, first of all, is it feasible? I think it is, but that's just off the cuff. And what size would it take on? I don't know. High Line is an amazing place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this would be a High Line that's a half a mile long. But if it's a half a mile long and 100 yards wide or 50 yards wide, and it's got plantings, and on one side it's got a park, and on the other side it's got a park, and we actually are connecting the two sides of the city. And again, it would take time and vision and money to develop, particularly the east side.
So let me just talk to you a little about that. So you're right. It's going to take time, and it's going to take design and a lot of vision that people much smarter than I have. So you're talking about an earmark at the end of the day, right? Because the money's probably not going to be considered in the project that the state's talking about.
Oh,
So
well,
we're really,
it's definitely not.
so we're
as I
talking.
understand
So we're
it.
talking about a federal earmark, right? So I've talked to Senator Shaheen's office, and the way you have to sell this apparently is really going to be through the lens of an economic development lens. Okay, so I think when you start thinking about access to the river and such, I'm asking you, think about it through that economic development view.
Well, that's why I said what I did about Claudia saying to me a second Main Street.
Yeah.
We've got a whole section of the east side of the river. There's not much going on over there. And there could be a ton. But you have to give a developer a reason, because they're going to want to return. Well, if we've got some vehicle for bringing the two sides together that gives them the impetus to go forward with developing the east side, then we have a second, this
Go think
off
big.
the top of my head.
Think big, okay?
All right.
Anybody else?
I guess I'm also an engineer, so I kind of care about the details. And it's hard for me to make a leap to something that right now seems like it's in a cloud. Has anyone in your group drawn anything on a plan so that we can understand what the vision is a little more?
Not that I know of. In talking to Tim Sink, the chamber today, I shouldn't have even quoted him, but, so forget that. I was totally confidential. No, so I thought he said that there have been some work done in that area. I don't know that.
I think it'd be helpful. I mean, take the
for
plans
sure.
from the presentation and just with
I
a
mean,
fat
this would
marker.
have a long way to go, for sure, because not only we would have to come up with the ideas, but also there'd have to be renderings, there would have to be engineering studies, there'd have to be all that stuff. I don't know if we have that time. That's why I see it as, if we're gonna even think about doing that kind of thing, which I think we should, we need to start today.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman.
I'm also an engineer,
Full disclosure.
so we got a couple here. This project has been going on since 1990. It was first introduced into the state's 10-year plan. And it's gone through a process that's pretty typical of a large investment like this. It's gone through a process where there was scoping, where ideas like yours were considered. Big grandiose ideas about
Depressing the
should it be here, or should it be there? A second Main Street, maybe the interstate should be on the other side of the river. All these things were investigated, and one by one they were dismissed. So now we kind of narrow down to a corridor. So then from there, we do some more scoping, some more preliminary design work. We do some traffic analysis, and we figure out what we need to correct the problem that we've identified. And if you saw the presentation, you saw that there was an overall statement of what the DOT is trying to achieve with the project. So at some point, you have to say, it's time to stop considering these big grandiose plans. We have to proceed. The traffic is building up. There's congestion at least 2 days a week, and it's going up to 3 and 4 days a week. So the longer we reconsider things that have already been considered, all that traffic is still backing up. All that pollution is still being put into the air. All that gasoline is still being wasted. People's time is being wasted. So, at some point, we just have to kind of focus on, we've been there, let's move on.
That's a would you believe question.
So I have a question in regards to that. So is it feasible that there could be some sort of place marker or some sort of concept of putting something into the current plan that could potentially be developed in 10 years and 20 years into the platform park or whatever the connector would be, so that it's not something that we have to hold the whole plan for now, but we could put a placeholder in that say this could be the spot where it would be the connector. This could be the spot where we could build the whatever, so that we have time to do the conceptual part and do the big thinking part and do all of the stuff that we'd like to do to move it forward, but without halting the entire project.
From my standpoint, first of all, I thought that the city of Concord in its Vision 2020 had been adamant about connecting to the river forever, and I didn't think that ever went off the table. So, but I've not been intimately involved in any of that. So, you know the history. I don't. I'm late to the party.
You're not late, you're right on time.
But, and I don't know the answer to that question. That's an engineering question. That's a question for the state to say, hey, this is what we envision for the future. Can you make sure that this highway, and I don't disagree with you. I understand what you're saying. This has been a long time coming, and there have to be changes, big changes to the highway. I'm not sure that we mitigate pollution to the degree we would want by bringing more cars going north and south, but that's a whole nother discussion. Slowing down obviously creates more pollution. I get that too. In any case, I can be here all night. Succinct, I'm not. Thank you.
Thank you
And
very
thank you
much.
for your service. I appreciate it.
Good to see you. Who'd like to go next? She's gonna go first, then you can go next. How's that? Good evening, welcome.
I'm Amy Evans, new to Concord, a dreamer. When I moved here last fall, I was kind of looking for a place to buy up on the hill. It was very attractive. And I ended up buying a condo in the Heights. So I had a perspective that I didn't really, I just kind of came in thinking it was all Concord. And up on the Heights, you'll find the big skies and the practical stores and the flat streets where you can teach your kid how to ride a bike and look up every once in a while and there'll be a little putt-putt plane going over. And it's quite lovely. I really, really like it. And I always just thought it was Concord, and I've come to see that there is a little bit of a divide. We all love downtown Concord, and I love going there. I love the historic homes and the shops, and I love being able to go to the Y or stores and walk back. It's a little scary sometimes. I sometimes do Loudon Road and sometimes do Manchester, and you know, there's stuff, there's traffic and everything, but it's doable. So thinking forward with this big production, this big divide, just seems not good from my standpoint, being up on the Heights, or anybody else who lives up on the Heights. So anyway, what my point is that we have the two lifestyles in Concord. It's wonderful, and it makes our town more rich that we have this historic part of us, and then these sort of folksy, nice, you know, flatlands up there. I like the sun, so I really do enjoy it up there. And anyone who travels, or has traveled at all, knows that our city is just a gem. It's just a unique place. It's wonderful. It's rich. It's just, you know, full of surprises every night. There's something going on, and it's really wonderful. So I wonder why we shouldn't build on these strengths. Our diversity, the fact that we do have these two different places, why can't we build on that? And I just want to remind you that the old man of the mountain has crumbled. So we need new iconic images. We need maybe like a deck park to join the east and the west, something so unusual and so startling and so different for Concord, for New Hampshire for that matter. I've lived in New Hampshire 30 years, and I went away, and anyway, it's New Hampshire. I mean, I love it, but we don't do stuff like that usually, so that would be really surprising. Or how about a riverside promenade to embrace the water that flows like an artery through the heart of our city? I've been to places like Cincinnati. I went recently. The river is huge. I mean, it's just all a part of what you do there. And granted, they have a shorter winter, but you know, you can enjoy it in the winter too, especially if we had the little shops or the little hot cocoa places or whatever along the way. The other thing is we want, and if we want young adults to live and work and stay here, it seems so foolish to diminish our sense of community by dividing our city. They need to have a reason to stay here, and it needs to be attractive, and it needs to be not old and stuffy, because I kind of like the old and stuffy people here, because I'm sort of like that now too, but I don't think younger people are going to stay for that. So if we could explore some innovative options, I think that we could keep Concord connected and find a way to keep the Heights and the downtown feeling like they are one. And I really respect all you do. I'm very impressed, and I look forward to seeing more things in years to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody? Sina, appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Sir? Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Tim Robson. I am a 1.5 year resident of Concord, and so don't have quite the credibility that everyone has, although I love roundabouts, and you can probably from my accent tell why. So we can have some talk about roundabouts if you want to. But we moved up here 18 months ago, and we didn't realize that there was quite the divide that existed within the city that is caused by I-93. And we have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something special. And I recognize that yes, there are problems with the traffic, but I'm not sure that the widening proposed is going to actually solve those issues. What is, I think it's just going to shift the blockage down the road, and we'll still get back up. We'll still get people using all the rat runs to avoid the traffic. So we're not, until something else changes, we're not actually going to solve very much by widening just this piece of highway. And we're also getting to that point here in our society where transportation and traffic is changing, and the car is not going to become as important. My son works in the bicycle industry. They're going all in on electric bikes because they believe that that's the future for commuting around the city, within the city, doing the shopping. You can do all of that stuff up and down these hills. We need some way to get a safe way to get across the river. And the designs that we have at the moment just seem to create these two locations where you can get across the river that make it incredibly difficult for pedestrians and cyclists to get across. We have to have a better solution. So the proposals that I'm seeing, I agree there's a lot that's gone into them, but they just don't seem to solve the problem. I'm an actuary, and I'm a great believer in modeling. I'd love to, I think there has to be some change here in the highway. I'm not sure it has to be quite as big as they're proposing, but as the state is proposing. But I'd love to see the modeling of the traffic as to how it really impacts the traffic on all of the arterial roads that are around here as well. Because you bring up an extremely good point. That traffic is getting worse, and we all have our routes to get around it on Friday and Sundays. And so we need to understand what's going to happen if we do this. And I haven't seen that modeling done yet. I haven't seen the modeling done on recent traffic flow data. I think we need to update the traffic flow data that we have to reflect the current environment, not environment 10 or 15 years ago. So.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
That's all I had.
And welcome. Truly welcome to Concord.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Or?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dave Cederholm, the city engineer, and you mentioned that we really need a safe way for pedestrians and bicycles to get across the river. So DOT has presented a number of ideas of getting the MRGT through exit 14, and then we are pretty much committed to a 14-foot wide multi-use path across the Loudon Road Bridge across the river. Would you consider that a safe way to get from downtown across the river?
I don't. I think that there are several holdups. People will take risks that will cause accidents because they're going to have it's such a big trip from one side of the highway to the other side of the highway. You're going to get stopped halfway through, and someone on a bicycle is going to trying to beat that light, and just as the cars are. And so I only see a solution where there's a complete separation somewhere, which gives a bike and pedestrian access that is just completely separate, which is why I support this platform park idea with the bridge across the river.
And I just want to say I agree with you. I think it would be outstanding to have that platform park that bridged the whole thing. But I just want to point out one of the things that we seriously considered when we were looking at the engineering study for the Loudon Road Bridge and then how the MRGT would kind of wiggle through is also to provide everybody, whether it's downtown or at the Heights, nice access to Fort Eddy, which is where a lot of services are. So it's just something I wanted to point out.
And, you know, I think we can cope with that in different ways from a different perspective, rather than having to share that underpass as it is at the moment with other people, with all the traffic that exists.
So maybe we need both.
Yes. Oh, I think we do. Sure. But we need an alternative that allows people with young children to get across.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who'd like to go next? Where? Thank you for your patience. Welcome.
It's been very interesting. My name is Susan Woods. I've lived in Concord for 14 years. I've lived in New Hampshire for 30 years. I came up here from Manchester. And I've been hearing about the transformative impact potential for this highway on Concord for years. I came up to chamber dinners for probably 30 years. And I guess I'm a little disappointed that as a city we haven't made more progress in terms of what this vision is. I mean, we knew the highway's coming, but in terms of ideas of, you know, do we do a cap and a bridge? Because I'm worried that this highway plan will go through, and then when we do finally come up with our vision of the cap and the bridge, they'll say, oh gosh, well, we can't accommodate that, and you're talking gazillion dollars to redo something. I would really hope we could fast track some of these ideas, figure out what their impact would be, so that the highway could at least accommodate, or at least not be a block to some of these visions that we have. I'm very concerned about the Loudon Road. I think we're trying to prioritize too many things. We're trying to give the I-93 access, but at the detriment to bicycles, people, and also the access to the bus station. We have a beautiful bus station here, and we're just about ready to cut it off from a lot of people being able to access it fairly easily. And I think other people have talked about the danger when you have one ways in, but you can't get back out the same way. People don't know that. They don't pay attention to the signs. And so you're going to be adding to that congestion along Loudon Road, which just further makes it difficult for bikes and people. My husband and I ride a tandem. I wouldn't ride on Loudon Road for $1 million. I mean, it's just so, and I don't see that what's being done in this plan is really going to address that very significantly, and I would hope we could do better. And maybe we have to sacrifice that northbound lane. It didn't sound like there were the car volume was relatively small, and we can't do everything. So the question is, what are our priorities? That's really all I had to add to the discussion. There have been a lot of good comments.
Thank you. Anybody have any? Appreciate your thoughts. Wants to go next?
Everyone. My name is Meredith Cooley, and I mostly have a question. One is I agree with everything that many people have said here, and particularly Aaron have said about a feasibility study for this cap park, this highway cap, as well as a robust public input and public outreach process as we move forward. My question is, there was a question you posed about what the plan for a cap park would look like, and I just had the absolute pleasure and honor of sitting at a table with a bunch of engineers who had some ideas about that. And so I'm wondering, and Jason's here, so I'm just wondering if this is even a possibility, but we've got downtown and we've got the Store Street area. Could that cap park come off the Store Street area? This is not my idea. Drop down across the rail and the highway to a retention wall on the west side of the river, where that would serve sort of as a river promenade, and then a wide, iconic, bringing our city together, pedestrian and bike bridge sloped down to the Merrimack River Greenway Trail on the other side. I bring up this idea because you've asked, well, what's the plan? And go think about a grand idea. I think this is that is absolutely a great idea. And I wonder if also, because of the way it would cap and fill in over the highway and the rail, whether that would make it so that you wouldn't have to bury the highway dramatically to make it happen, so that the highway could then come up as it's going north towards the Loudon, still be able to go over Loudon Road, and so that DOT financially wouldn't have to have the cost, or the city wouldn't have the cost of bearing it. I bring up the actual plan, that idea, because if that were something that a feasibility report showed could happen, and we could have a river promenade with a walkable, bikeable connector across, then the highway plan that's being pushed forward could accommodate for that, as just like Susan was saying, not get in the way of a future earmark for this plan. So I think when we talk about an earmark for having a highway cap, that's just pushing something down the road that then this highway is going to cause a great issue to get in the way of. I hope you guys are following me. My brain's going a million miles an hour, but essentially, we don't want the highway to be an impediment to a highway cap. So there's also an issue that has come up about how long the highway construction is going to take and how long it's going to cut off our city from one side to the other. And really understanding, first of all, what the current proposal is, how long that's going to cut off one side to the other. But also, if we were to do this highway park, expedite it, how long that would cut the highway off, because it could be that it wouldn't cut it off more than having DOT lay the tracks for this highway cap wouldn't cut off the city for much longer than it's already expected to cut it off. So essentially, Loudon Road would go on exactly how they have Loudon Road underpass would continue on the way they have it, but a plan would be laid beforehand for that Store Street highway cap promenade pedestrian river bridge. I bring that all up because, to me personally, the divide in our city is deep. It's a narrative that is debilitating. I wonder if some folks from the east side of the river aren't here tonight because the access might be too much to have someone come and participate tonight. It's a socioeconomic divide. It's a resource divide. It's a green space divide. It's an incredible divide. And if we can use this opportunity to bridge that divide in an iconic way with a pedestrian bridge across the river and a cat park, it would bring us towards what other cities are doing all over the country, which is righting these wrongs of 1960s highway expansion. So I bring you that actual idea because it's doable, and as it's Mr. Lemieux was saying, there's a point where you just have to do the project. It's been in the works. Well, the master plan's been in the works for a long time too, and it's time to take that seriously and push that dividing our city as well. So it's time to also address this and get to it and not earmark it for down the road. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Maybe questions? So, I'm sure what you said made perfect sense, but I'm just probably not that smart. So, just help me understand a little bit more. So, I'm thinking there's a thing called Brixmore in the way. What are you doing at Brixmore? How do you envision that? Does it?
So, I started this with, I'm not an engineer, I just have a lot of engineer
Neither am I,
friends.
so
So
let's
can
design.
I hand
We
that
can do
over
this.
to some of the folks at TPAC to work that thought?
No, I'm just trying to figure out from what you said. So, there's you have construction down there with 110 Grill and Starbucks is coming in, and you have, Brother's Coat Factory and all those kind of things,
So
right?
what happens with that development?
Are you going over that?
No,
or
no.
Are you going around it?
Well, as far as I know, the city is, as far as I know, especially with the new zoning, there would be a vision for having that be a mixed use, that whole Store Street area, mixed use, commercial, residential development, preferably with crisscross streets and all sorts of great revenue building things in that area, the Store Street area. That, you're talking about where the Market Basket is. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so Brixmore
So
owns
behind that
Yep.
is where
Yep.
it would go down to the river. Over the highway.
No, I'm with you. That's how I understood it.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you talked about coming off Pleasant Street, I was trying to figure out how you got from Pleasant Street Extension, because I thought that's what you said. Maybe I got it wrong.
Store Street.
Right.
So, sorry, Store Street, which includes, sorry, in my mind, it's Store Street, to be clear, Market Basket and what you call, I didn't know it was called Brixmore.
Well, they're the owners, that's all.
The Brixmore's
So they own
development
from
plan.
basically Bank of America
Yeah.
down to the Liquor Commission.
Yes, and I haven't put this on a map, but it would be the Store Street, then that whole development, Brixmore,
Yep.
would just stay there.
Yeah.
Behind that,
Right.
it would cap over the rail and the highway.
That's how I understood it. Okay, got you.
So my guess is that the DOT would have to drop the highway and push the train together to have it go a little lower than it is now, but then fill in over it like a tunnel with the cat park on top, and have that end at a retaining wall on this side, on the west side of the river, and from that, which would be like a promenade to walk up and down as you're coming to do your shopping, and then you'd go over.
So
And
why do you think they need to depress the highway?
I don't even think they need to, which would save a lot of time and money.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Anyone else?
I have a question. How wide would it be? Like 100 feet wide, 200 feet wide, 50 feet wide?
I think that's when charrettes and workshops come in. What it was the city want. I can tell you what I would want to see, but I would really want to hear what all of the city wants to see.
Your vision,
Yeah.
how wide would you envision it being?
I would see it being,
Like a
ideally,
block wide?
it would be pretty darn wide, so that it's an actual walking river promenade, like you see in other cities where you stroll along the river and then you duck back in to have your shopping and experience in your city, and you come to TPAC meetings. But you have a feature there that is cool, that people will bring people to Concord. And then you have, I would like to see a very wide, iconic bridge going across the river that would sort of slope down to meet up with the Merrimack River Greenway Trail. And so now you've got your 18-year-old on his bike wanting to come to the TPAC meeting, comes down. TPAC has this great Gully Hill road project going on it's like amazing how that could tie in and just come right down Gully Hill and with the new plan, come over that bike pedestrian bridge, right onto that promenade, park your bike, walk in, and have at all the resources that Concord has downtown. Civic engagement, businesses, all that kind of stuff. Even better if there was a main street, thanks to new zoning, on the other side with great mixed use there. Then everybody's going across this pedestrian bike bridge, making the city lots of money, and, you know, building our city back into a unified, cohesive, great place to live. It already is. It could be better.
One more thing. So one obstacle I envision for that, and even though I'm an engineer, I did start out in art school, so I just want to, so I have
I went to
big,
art
crazy
school
ideas
too. So we're on the same
Don't be
page
an
there.
architect.
No, art, like painting.
No, I'm saying, is an architect like a, never mind, I'll let it go.
Anyway, so to bridge over the highway, that would mean this deck park would have to be 20, 25 feet above, so, you know, you got to get over the highway, and the trucks need to get underneath, so
Yep.
then you're like 18 feet above the highway, just the underside of this thing, and then big concrete structure, so you're really talking the top of this deck is now 25 feet above the highway. Then you get over to the river, and of course the river, it's like 12 feet down from just the riverbank down to the river, so you're literally then like 40 feet above the water once you get over there, and then we got to get down somehow. So technically, I'm just like really struggling with that.
Well, I throw it to the engineers in the room.
So that's why I asked Craig, Mr. Savage, specifically that idea of what does access to the river mean to you?
Yeah.
Because for some people who have talked to me, it means they want to be able to actually dip their toes in the water.
Right.
Some people, being 40 feet in the air, but being able to look over the river is just fine.
Well,
That's
you'd
access
have
to them.
both.
So I was trying to figure,
You'd have both, because on the one side, you'd be able to enjoy
that's
it.
what I'm getting
and
at.
wa-
On the
stroll
west side,
along
what
with
does
your,
it mean? On the east side, what does it mean, right?
Right, and then on the east side, you'd be at the Merrimack River Greenway Trail level, maybe kayak input. I don't know. I know there's groups working on that type of resource. So it, you know, having that on the other side of the river would just increase the play between the sides and would be wonderful.
But the height doesn't
Also,
bother you.
well, the height, 40 feet, certainly, because, I mean, I have sadly jumped off a 40-foot cliff before in my life for fun, and wasn't so fun, but that's a long way down. It still gives you a beautiful view of the river. So I guess I would have to see that sketched out. But that's where DOT comes in. Could they lower that highway? And so maybe 40 feet is too much, but would 30 feet be too much? Well, it's going to be dead in the water if the highway is already built the way it's proposed now, and we don't have that opportunity to lower it a little to accommodate the city of Concord.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
So it sounds to me like you described a vision as something that could happen, and you're not an engineer, and even engineers sitting around a table, I mean, it's just a napkin thing. So we need to answer that question is, can it be done? If we could, what would it look like? And then once we have that picture of what does it look like, we can answer, is that good? Do we like it? But like, I feel like we don't have enough information right now to say whether that's a great idea or how feasible it is or the
Which is-
magnitude of the project.
Yeah, which is exactly why I seconded Aaron's testimony for a feasibility study, the city to hire a firm that specializes in cat parks and things like that, and innovative ideas to, there are firms that really look at bridging the divides in cities and cat parks, et cetera, hiring one of those firms to come in on the double and do a feasibility study on this idea or whatever TPAC's brilliant minds have put together for something similar, because I'm sure y'all have thought about it. So that's an ask, is a feasibility study by a firm who does highway caps ASAP, as well as public input and public outreach.
I think it's great that Ms. Fox's firm decided to do it for free, so it's awesome.
You know?
She volunteered, it was awesome. Thank you so much.
Can I ask you one question? Many of us have been suggesting and wanting and desiring a bridge, a pedestrian bridge and bike bridge over the river south of Loudon Road. In your mind, would that achieve the same objectives as a cat park? If there was a bridge that went over the river, over the highway, over the rail, over the river, and then touched down in the fields, in the cornfields across the river, with some sort of a loop to get people at the edge of the river.
No, I see what you're saying, and they sort of had one of those in the plans, like a little, I don't know what they call it, a little piece of spaghetti going across to where, to the, it would go, I just wonder what that would feel like to go over a bridge, a small bridge across a highway and a river, and what would that feel like? What would that experience be like? Would people want to do that? So first looking at what would that experience be like, and then compare that to what entire, block plus iconic community park with a walking promenade along our river. I don't even think it's close.
But what if that walking promenade was on the other side of the river?
So where the cornfields are now? From my discussions, it was with a few folks, the idea of taking away those cornfields, which are currently owned by the city, and they're rented out by the farmers who farm them, that's something that they feel pretty strongly about continuing for sustainable food and agriculture for the city, which is a really important part. But if that was doable to have I guess it's just, I guess I would just have to look at, I just have to see that. If that was doable to have the whole promenade and the shops and all that kind of stuff on the east side, and have significant, iconic pedestrian bike pet across, sort of just like the same grand idea, but flip. I'd have to look at it, but I don't know right off the top of my head why that wouldn't work. Aside from reducing the amount of sustainable local food we're producing, which is going to...
There's 75 feet between the edge of the river and the beginning of the cornfields. So
Yeah.
there's that much place to play with.
Mhm.
It's
Could
highly
you
regulated.
get closer to your mic? Or get closer to your mic?
I said there's 75 feet between the edge of the river and the beginning of the cornfields. So that's the blank page you would have to work with if you were to build a promenade, and the sort of thing that you're thinking about on the east side of the river. And I was going to add that's highly regulated. I mean, I'm involved in the group that's trying to build a trail in that area, and there's all sorts of rules that we have to meet, and delays just to build, what is it, 75 feet or 50 feet away from the river. So that part between the edge of the river and that 50 feet, that's sort of like you don't touch that because it's riverside, it's watershed. So there's even less room on the west side of the river between the highway and the river. So the only choice you have is to build a platform above the river, but how would you get down to the river?
I'm not suggesting
That's what
you'd
the
get...
mayor was asking, is that access to the river to you if you're 40 feet above it and looking down at it?
No, that's not what I'm suggesting, is that you get to this promenade and then like go down a steep set of stairs like you would maybe sort of in places in Europe, down to a little launch pad and then throw yourself into the river there. I'm saying that you would not have, you would not be able to reach the river on the Store Street stretch from the Cap Park. You would be able to access the promenade, but then from the promenade, you'd be able to walk across the bridge down to your trail, and you'd be down at the level of the river, and I don't know whether there's going to be features along the Greenway Trail where you can dip your toes in the water. I don't know. I hope there is. That would make a lot of sense to have us have access to the water in physically, but so you'd get both. You'd have this nice access to the water in terms of a promenade and sort of a city, the way a lot of cities have access to their water. I'm thinking Savannah has a wall and a walking promenade, a couple others. I don't know why Savannah's where my sister lives. But then you'd be able to walk across the river, enjoy that experience of being on a beautiful bridge over the river, and then you'd be down on your trail actually dipping your toes in. So you'd get all the three experiences.
We have one more for you.
I have a question for you. In all your conversations about this deck park, have you thought about the noise of the highway and the impacts to being able to enjoy a deck park like that is above the interstate? I just wonder if
that is a great question.
You know, it could impact. It sounds great. It sounds wonderful. You're enjoying the river, but a lot of these promenades elsewhere don't have the interstate underneath. So I just wonder.
Let me ask Craig about his experience in Texas. Is he still here? Could you hear the highway?
I wasn't there, but in Dallas, right now they're building one over I-35 in the Oak Cliff area southwest of the downtown. They're doing exactly that. They're building it over I-35.
But could they hear the highway from on top of it?
So I don't know that about the sound aspect of things. There's companies like SoundSorb that put sound absorbing materials in place to mitigate that to a degree. There's no question though that, I can hear the traffic playing golf when I'm up in Concord Country Club. So, that we all experience that. In my house, I can hear I-89. So, yes, that would be an issue, but you can hear it downtown too. So.
So for the people watching this, what Craig says is that noise of the highway is an issue everywhere, and not to let. I'm paraphrasing for you. Not to let that get in the way of the vision. There's city sounds, there's blasting sounds from the granite, what's it called? The mine up there, the quartz. So cities have sounds, and I wouldn't let that get in the way of this experience. And you'd cross over to the Merrimack Greenway Trail where there's cornfields. So you'd be able to also escape the sounds to some degree when you're in the city.
Thank you very much. Well said. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Who'd like to go next? Anyone? Well, before you come up just want to make sure everybody gets a shot at first time. Anybody first time? Hey there, how are you?
Good evening.
Good to see you.
I'm Liz Durfee-Hengen, and I didn't come this evening prepared to say anything, but I've heard a lot, so I just want to briefly comment. I've lived in Concord for 40 years now, and I was involved in some of the design teams or the consulting teams that have looked at earlier iterations of what do we do about this highway coming through Concord. And I've looked briefly at the highway plans that are the current ones that McFarland Johnson, which is a very capable firm, has put together with input from the city thus far. What really strikes me is that Concord is a different place today than it was in 1983 when I landed here. It is far more vibrant. I have been continually amazed by the public initiatives that have taken off. Many of them downtown. And when I look at these plans, yes, there are definitely some new ideas, some concessions that have been made. There's a much better attempt to connect to the river than we've seen before, and that's certainly been an objective that's been expressed the entire 40 years that I've been in town. But it still feels like a traditional highway plan. and it still is designed primarily for cars and not for people. Concord is very much a city of people. Most communities are, but I think Concord is special in that way. And I have heard some interesting ideas thrown out this evening, which I know some of them are new, and I know that we're far along in the planning process. But it's never too late to rethink and to reframe and at least to toss around some additional ideas, maybe try to fast track them in such a way, because once we are shovels in the ground here, there's no turning back. And whatever highway expansion happens is going to have a significant impact far into the future.
Do you have any particular designs that you think would be interesting to pursue?
Well, until a few hours ago, I hadn't heard anything about the platform park. I have experienced such a design in Seattle, the sculpture park that's built over the highway, the interstate. I have no recollection of hearing noise, so it may have just been part of the experience. But I was there about 10 years ago, and I was just enthralled by the innovativeness. And Concord's capable of being very innovative. So I just would hope that the conversation can continue for a bit longer.
Any other grand
wow ideas? I will email you if I think of them.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Anybody else? Thanks. I appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Steve Winnett. I also came with no intention to get up in front of you and speak. I'm a resident of 27 years, so more than some and less than some others. And I was part of or attended many of the meetings, some of the meetings around 2002, 2005, 2019 of Concord 2020. So I remember, for instance, the plans to have, or the proposals to have the highway on the other side of the river. And I understand why those were probably thrown out. My memory is that from the very beginning, there were plans to have a pedestrian bridge, at least, if not a pedestrian bike bridge across the river. I don't know that that was thrown out, but I can remember some of those sketches. And I remember there being parks along maybe even the west side of the river between the highway and the river for those, and on the other side also, and the bridge linking both of them. And it seemed like everyone at these meetings was in favor of that sort of thing. They thought that we really, and I've heard a number of people say connecting both sides of the river has always been an important part of the plan, and that's my memory too, that from the very beginning people expressed a strong interest, everyone that came that I talked to. I hadn't thought about the platform park over the highway, but it seems like from the very beginning there were ideas to get over the highway. And I can remember, I feel as if I remember that depressing the highway low enough to get over the highway has always been one of the ideas that was thrown out. And I feel like I saw in the paper the other day, the Concord Monitor, there might have even been a figure, a drawing about that expressed the possibility of doing that. But it sounds like from the interest expressed here for going over the highway, that we need to plan in, the DOT needs to plan in to have the opportunity to keep our options open. I guess that's the best way to put it. The DOT needs to plan in such a way that we keep our options open so that if we do want to go over the highway is depressed enough from the very beginning that we can make that happen. And maybe something like that doesn't happen, but maybe something does. But if the highway isn't depressed from the very beginning, then we don't have that ability later on. So I agree that at some point, from the engineering point, you've got to do something, but I don't think that we should make decisions that foreclose the ability to use some of the great ideas, however colorful they may be, to do things in the future that will make this place, make Concord a really great place to live. I've heard Concord compared to Portland, Oregon. And I'll admit that when I got out of college, that's where I really wanted to live, because spending a little bit of time in Portland, the place has such vitality. It just feels alive, just the way the sunlight comes in, the mountains in the background. And this person from Portland said, you know, you didn't miss out on that because Concord is just like that. And I had to spend some time thinking about that. And I realized, you know, we have the river, and I've heard anecdotal evidence from places like Portland, places like San Antonio. Have you been to the Riverwalk there? Every city I've ever heard about that made use, that brought people down to the city, has had extraordinary success in economic development, in increasing the numbers of people that use the place. And I've heard so much about getting people to the river, and in every place they've done that, they've had extraordinary economic growth. And I think we should plan in the ability to get people to the river. And the gentleman from DOT probably knows a lot more about this than I do, but I think we ought to at least make sure that if we need to depress the highway to make all of these things possible, whatever the final design is, that gets done so that we have the options open ahead of us, because it sounds like it's going to take a while to figure out exactly what we want to do. I live on the west side of the river, and maybe it's because of the people that live around me. I heard that maybe the guy that runs Stonyfield Yogurt, is his name Rob Hirschfeld, had an idea to create a restaurant near a boathouse and restaurant. Boathouse on the lower floor and a restaurant on the top floor on the other side of the river. And isn't that just sort of the thing we need, you know, to get the community to the river, economic development, more of that kind of thing? I don't know how interested Hirschfeld really was, but it sounds like the kind of thing that, you know, would really be possible with more access to the river, whether it's over by the ice rink or by the Concord Crew boathouse over there. But these are the sorts of things that we want to make sure we keep our options in order to pull off, no matter how long it takes us to make the decisions about what the final plan, what the vision ends up giving us. And Concord 2020 vision was all about doing this sort of thing, and I think we need to make sure that we keep our options open to have them happen.
Thank you very much. Anybody? Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that tonight.
Sure. Thank you.
Anybody else want to go for the first time? Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Mike Nikitas. I moved to Concord a year ago after 30 years in Windham. I live on the east side, on the Heights, and I lived through the earlier, I used to call it our big dig in Windham, when they 3-laned and 4-laned at 93 from exit 1 up to Manchester. I also worked in Boston for about 25 years, so I saw the big dig take place, and I was really struck by the fact the day that they took down the central artery and there was no noise in the north end, and Boston was no longer cut off from the waterfront. And I think that we have a chance to kind of do that in reverse here. One of the things that I was struck by when I moved here was that the east side and Concord proper, for lack of a better term, are cut off by the highway and the river. So I think that there needs to be some way to connect the two. I saw most of the hour and 40-minute video. I saw the plans A through F. And I really think that I'm just suggesting that you at least consider the feasibility of this highway cap or this park, platform park over the city. I think it's a great point that it could be an iconic structure. I've spent time in Sydney, Australia. Everybody's seen the Sydney Opera House. It's an iconic structure. I think that Concord has a chance, even though I've only been here a year, I think that there's an opportunity to come up with something iconic. And I just think that, and I don't know the logistics. I saw the plan. I don't know the logistics of including this, but I think that at least at this point should be something that's looked at to connect people back and forth and to the river.
That's exactly why we're here, to make sure everything gets looked at. So it's appreciated. Anybody? Well, I have to ask, so why'd you move to Concord?
Well,
because it was one of the best decisions you've ever made.
It was one of the best decisions we ever made. We were in Wyndham for 30 years. We have 3 or 4 children who live in the area, in or around Concord, and 1 in Australia. So
well, we're very glad you chose Concord.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for all the work you're doing. Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
During the big dig, and that was a long process.
It sure was.
Did you notice that any communities were cut off during the construction? Because there are a few people from the east side. There are some shop owners who are on Loudon Road who would be severely impacted if, we go through with depressing the highway and cutting off that access to Loudon Road from I-93. Was there any, did you notice when you were in Boston that there was significant impact to neighborhoods?
Yes. Yes, there was, and yes, there were businesses that went out of business. There were businesses that tried to stay in business, who people didn't know were still in business, and that was a constant problem that the city was constantly dealing with.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Again. Anybody else want to go for the first time? Sure. Okay. Alan, you want to go again? Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening again, and I want to thank Greg for giving me permission to be less succinct. So I moved up here in 1973, and I came to Concord in 74, and I worked at the state hospital for about a year and a half and lived on the grounds. And with the exception of about half a dozen years, I've been in Concord, since 1974. And one of the things I noticed when I moved here, we had a population of about 30,000, a little more. So we've seen our population increase by about 50%. But we've seen traffic increase exponentially. And if we consider, if we have, with the new zoning, if we see more density, more people, are we going to see traffic continue to outpace the population? And how are we going to deal with that? I remember on Sunday mornings in 74, 75, going out for a run and leaving the hospital grounds, coming down to Bridge Street and going up Loudon Road, across Airport Road, and then back down Manchester Street. And a busy Sunday morning between 10 and noon, you would see 2 cars, literally 2 cars. That's all you would see. Try that now. So I think that's one of the concerns is traffic going to continue to outpace density, and how are we going to deal with that? So one of the things that was brought up during the discussions tonight was that 14-foot multi-modal or multi-use access across, on the Loudon Road Bridge. And my thought is what happens if we didn't need to have a significant amount of access on the Loudon Road Bridge, and we could move that to that platform, that pedestrian bicycle bridge that would cross the Merrimack River somewhere between Store Street and to the Merrimack River Greenway. And then what would happen, as opposed to pushing bicycle and pedestrian traffic onto Loudon Road, once we got up Gully Hill, we opened that access point to Pembroke Road and used that as an access for bicycle traffic. And then they could use the side streets to access businesses or residences on Loudon Road. I think we still have a bit of an opportunity to access some of that property on the south side of Pembroke Street to perhaps widen Pembroke Road, for additional, for bicycle and pedestrian use, as opposed to trying to put everything onto Loudon Road. So I'm getting a little specific here, and I'll try to move along a little bit more. So I think it's also very important as we're moving forward with the zoning and looking to, I know there's, the council is looking to hopefully approve the new zoning by the end of the year, but I'm still concerned about the integration of how the zoning works with our neighborhoods, as was brought up in 2020. Are we providing accessible access to our city's neighborhoods? And how does the zoning and the master plan integrate with the I-93 project? That's about all I wanted to add, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Sure.
So there have been a number of questions of asking for designs of what this platform park should look like. And it's sort of hard to show, but in 2005, the city got a study done that shows what a platform park would look like right there by Bradley's. I was wondering if that has been revived in this newer age.
Has that specifically been? No,
Yes.
not that I know of.
Okay. Is that feasible?
I think at this point, as far as I'm concerned, anything's feasible.
Okay.
I mean, we just have to figure out what we can all agree upon, and then we have to figure out how to pay for it.
All right. Thank you. I understand that's
That's
someone paid a lot of money to do the study.
That's my own personal view. That is not the
No,
reflection of anybody else's.
that's fine. I just know the city probably paid a lot of money 15 years ago. Let's use this as a jumping off point for that platform park and bridge across the river.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. One last time. Anybody? Okay. I really appreciate everyone taking the time and sharing their thoughts tonight. I think we got a whole lot of really good input, and I think it'll help us all make better decisions. So thank you for taking your time. So we are, I think we've had a pretty long meeting. So our next regular scheduled meeting is September 22nd. It would be my goal to meet before then, so that we could actually really deliberate amongst ourselves and see where we want to go, and then eventually by the end of September, maybe formalize some ideas and put something on paper to send to the city council. Does that sound feasible to Councilor?
Yeah, that sounds great. I wanted to follow up on one of the ideas that came up earlier. Without doing a full charrette, would it make sense for us to do a site visit down to the area where people are talking about some of the different ideas that have been presented tonight? And if we do it in the evening, it's going to be getting darker soon, so we might have to do a daytime thing. But I think that might be helpful for us all as we're envisioning.
Yeah, that always sounds good to me. It's private property, I believe, so we probably have to check with the landowners to make sure we can go trudging through their land. But because I think Brixmore owns some, I think Unitil owns some, if I'm not mistaken. The state owns some. Is that about right?
So there is a parcel that is Fish and Game property that is, between the northbound off-ramp and the river, just on the south side of Loudon Road. In fact, Fish and Game years ago had a facility there.
Right.
I have a suggestion. On September 11th, there's going to be the Merrimack River Greenway Trail Triathlon, which will be running along the river, biking along the cornfields, and paddling in the river, so you would get a unique perspective of recreation, dipping your toes in the water, so it might be something to consider.
Always good to be healthy. So I'm going to work with our friends here at engineering, and we'll forward some dates to you all to see if we can come up with agreed upon time to meet again, and perhaps we can do a site visit as well. Does that seem acceptable to everybody? And if everybody can't make the site visit, because I know people actually work and jobs, and all you engineers are probably working, so, or you should be working. But as many people can make it, perhaps we could do that. And I agree, Councilor Brown, if you can make it on your own, then you check it out on your own as well.
When you suggested having a meeting before the 22nd, did you mean instead of or in addition to?
In addition to.
I'm not going to be here on the 22nd.
So we don't have to meet on the 22nd. We can. What's that?
I'm not either.
Okay, we can.
Deb's son is getting married.
What? You're gonna choose that? All right. So, I mean, I'm not worried about the 22nd, but I would like to do something sooner, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of that.
Good idea.
Okay, we'll send out some dates and we'll see where we can land on something agreeable to everybody. In the meantime, we're all gonna run on the 11th, is that what it is?
Yes.
Yep. All right. But you're running for me, correct?
Are you biking for me? You bike for me, I'll run for you. Sounds like a deal.
Okay.
Doing CPR.
Anybody else have anything before we adjourn?
Battle's ready.
I'm over
Okay.
adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.